Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Real-Time AI for FinTech, Building a Stock Market Advisor Chatbot. My name is Matt Brown, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, just a few logistical reminders. Today's discussion is being recorded, and you're currently in a listen-only mode. You can submit questions throughout the session using the Q&A functionality in the lower section of your Zoom console. If this is your first time joining a SingleStore webinar, heads up that we present regular webinars demoing data and AI use cases and new technologies. So on Friday, 2 days from now, we will be presenting Llama 2 versus Mistral for fully private Gen AI apps. Maybe you've heard about Mistral's new capabilities and launching their new mixture of experts model. You may be wondering how that compares to Llama 2 for fully private LLM apps. If this comparison sounds interesting to you or just this topic in general, you can RSVP right now. There's the bit.ly on your screen, QR code on your screen. You can take a photo or a screenshot of that. I will also put that link in the chat in a few minutes. And then on the next slide, you'll see that I'm also excited that we're going to be presenting our Meet SingleStore Pro Max Powerhouse Edition on January 24th. If you've attended our previous webinars, you'll already know that SingleStore is positioned as the best database for real-time AI at scale. The event on January 24th will unveil all of the new features that our engineers have been hard at work on for the past several months. We've got 1,000x faster vector search using ANN, approximate nearest neighbors. We've got new on-demand compute service for GPUs, new job scheduler for continuous vectorization of data streams, and a new free shared tier. You probably already know that we have a free trial, but I hope you'll come check out this new free shared tier, which will be available to users indefinitely. If this sounds interesting to you, RSVP right now at that bit.ly on your screen or the QR code. There's an on-site option for anyone that lives in Silicon Valley. Seats are limited, though. And there's also a virtual registration for everyone else around the world. I'll put this link in the chat in a minute as well. Back to today's topic, we have some great experts that are joining our Zoom. Feel free to get your questions in throughout the session. We'll try to answer as many as we can digitally, and we'll also save some for the live Q&A at the end of the show. We'd also love for you to try out what we're going to be presenting today. Anyone who tries it out today during this session will be entered for a chance to win brand new AirPods Pro. This is the latest and greatest version that's available from Apple. All you need to do is click that link, bit.ly AI for FinTech raffle, or scan that QR code that's on your screen. Just log into SingleStore. There's a free trial if you're a new user. You can log into your existing account if you're already a customer or an ongoing trial. You don't need to input a credit card or anything like that if you're new and just want to check things out. We're going to check the folks who log into this link. We will announce the winner of that AirPods by the end of today's session. Let me introduce our speaker. Akmal Chowdhury is a senior technical evangelist at SingleStore. He has strong expertise in big data, machine learning, and AI. He is an awesome author. He's a regular speaker at our weekly webinars, and I'm excited to see what he's cooked up for us today. Welcome, Akmal. You now have the floor.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Matt, and thank you, all of you, for joining. And so, as always, I always check my time around about now, and it's just gone 6 o'clock here in London, and that's indeed the case today as well. So, very dark outside, and winter time here still, very cold, but hopefully we'll work through something that's interesting and challenging and relevant to you and be useful to you as well. And so let me just begin by firstly this drawing your attention to the link that Matt shared. Okay, so this bit.ly link, which by the way, Matt will post all of these links into the chat. Okay, so in case you didn't have time to note it down or scan the QR code, no worries. Okay, there's no rush. It'll all be available to you. So if you do this and click on this, hopefully you'll be you can still see my screen. And Matt, please keep me straight. Okay, so if I'm talking about something and you can't see it, let me know. But don't want the audience to be in the dark, so to speak. So if you do that, you can see here the sign up page for the trial, and literally I think, less than a minute of your time. I mean, you can be registered for this. And let me just take a look. I'm looking for my box here. There we are. You can use either Google or Microsoft, or you can put your details in, first name, last name, and company email address, and just click the continue button. Okay, and that will get you signed up. I think there's a kind of a verification email, and just click on the link, and that will get you in. And we'll see that environment in just a couple of minutes' time. Okay, so back to the slides. Okay, there we go. One important disclaimer, because I'm going to be using some generated fictitious data. In addition, there's going to be some real data, so it's kind of a combination of the two. But it's important to know that the stock data in this webinar is entirely fictitious, okay? So it's purely for demo purposes. Please do not use this data for making any kind of financial decisions, all right? You have been warned. And I'll show you where the data are coming from, okay? It's actually, we use a Kafka, and we've got a feed, and these stock symbols, this ticker is being generated pseudo-randomly, I would say, probably. But, it's a feed that's available. And if you decide you'd like to utilize that as well, you are very welcome to do so. Okay, so with that out the way, let me just move on. So as Matt mentioned, I guess I've been with SingleStore over 2.5 years now. And so I focus a lot these days, obviously, on the Gen AI. I mean, it's kind of fairly popular stuff. Around about a year ago, or a little bit over a year ago, we saw the release of ChatGPT. And ever since then, I mean, it's just, this whole area has just exploded. Lots and lots of new stuff coming along. LangChain is one of the frameworks that I'll be using today. I'm using a little bit of OpenAI, but there are other LLMs available as well. And we've covered some of these in previous webinars too, and more in the future as well. Okay, so there is a choice. Okay, you are fortunate today in terms of where you can go to. And the cost of using these as well, especially the commercial ones, is going down all the time, which is great. I mean, it makes it feasible now to do large-scale kind of analysis of data at really very, very low cost. So in terms of the agenda today, a little bit of an introduction, just a couple of slides there. We'll drill down straight away into the FinTech. I have just 1 or 2 slides there to show you, and then we focus very much on the demos, okay? And so one of the things that I found, also an observation, and I've mentioned this previously, is that because this is a very fast-changing space, fast-changing environment, sometimes things tend to break. So I built some code a little while ago for the FinTech. Everything was working great until this morning, when I found that changes in LangChain, changes in OpenAI, stuff is a little bit broken. Took me a bit of time to fix it. But I guess the important thing there is that, pin down particular versions of libraries, if you do go down this route, that can help most of the time. I actually did that. But it didn't save me, in the sense that the background changes was so fundamental, a lot of stuff, beyond what I expected, that unfortunately it meant I still had to go in and modify the code. But anyway, that is something to think about. So what we're going to cover today is we'll look a little bit at stock tick and stock sentiment data. Okay, so the stock tick data, this thing here, let me just get this. Okay, so this is entirely fictitious. This is derived from real data, which is available on Kaggle. Okay, that's where I got it from. And then we'll take a look at a bit of sort of natural language using LangChain, SQL agent. And if there's time, hopefully there will be, we'll take a look at the OpenAI's sort of Whisper speech to text. It's pretty cool stuff. And the nice thing there is that there are kind of 2 versions of this. There's a commercial version, which you can pay for. Everything gets sent to OpenAI for evaluation, or you can download it and install it locally from GitHub, the open source version. And I'm using the open source version today. And it's very, very good. I like it. works really well. And then you can combine these technologies essentially to arrive at something like this. Build yourself a very basic chatbot for questions and answers, something that you want to find out about financial data, maybe some investment strategies, that kind of thing. It's entirely doable. Okay, so just 2 slides on SingleStore DB. So in a nutshell, in a succinct kind of paragraph, if you like, we could say this about it, that it is a real-time distributed SQL database designed for modern applications and real-time analytics. Matt alluded to the analytics stuff just a couple of moments ago there. And so historically, where the product has come from, previously used to be called MemSQL, mem implying in memory. Okay, so that's very much where the focus was, in memory processing for OLTP, very fast. Subsequently added analytics capabilities through columnar storage. So, these operations, some min, max, average, count, being able to do them at scale, and then having a single table type now that can manage both of these kind of requirements, both the OLAP and the OLTP. So this notion of having this unified engine, which is kind of mentioned in the second paragraph there. Unified data engine supports transactions, analytics, multiple data models. Okay, it's a multi-model as we refer to it, not multimodal. Okay, important difference. So we've covered this in webinars recently. And if we look at it from kind of a high-level 30,000-foot view, very much we could say the following. So at its heart, the product has this universal storage. Okay, and there you can see this kind of graphic representing the single table type, multiple data types be supported. Fast ingest in CDC. So previously I've worked with things like Kafka, for example, and we are actually using a Kafka feed today. And transformations using Spark. So we have a Spark connector, works really well. It's got query pushdown as well, and other capabilities. And of course, you might be on other environments such as Hadoop, HDFS, and so on. And I think what the animation here is showing is the kind of the parallel ingest using pipelines into SingleStore DB. So you can actually get vast quantities of data in at scale and quite fast. It's available on multiple platforms. So the 3 major cloud platforms in the Western world. Today, I shall be using AWS. You can run it on-prem as well. Okay. And there's a Docker container as well if you want to try it out. But seriously, a really easy way to test it out is to use that link that Matt shared with you. Sign up. It's all in the cloud. Everything is browser-based, nothing to install locally. And that just makes the experience much better, simply because you don't have to worry about libraries or memory or storage or these kind of things. It's all managed for you in the cloud. Here are the different kind of data types, multimodal as we refer to. Obviously, at its heart, it is very much a relational database management system. But other data types, such as geospatial, which we've again covered in past webinars. Today, we're going to look a little bit at time series. Okay, there is a full text search engine built in as well, Lucene. And even you could use it for key value, for example. There's JSON support, which has been there for some time. Even better with the introduction of SingleStore Kai, which was introduced last year. It's a MongoDB compatibility. So the interesting thing about SingleStore is that it is both MySQL wire compatible. So if you're familiar with that product and its ecosystem, and MongoDB wire compatible if you're familiar with that product and its ecosystem in terms of tools and language bindings and so on. So both of those are possible. And last but not least, the thing at the bottom here, vectors, okay, which we're seeing a lot of interest in, obviously, today, the development of vector libraries, vector databases, this whole notion of kind of long-term memory. We'll use a little bit of that today. I'll show you some of that. One important point to note is that SingleStore has had vector support actually for quite a long time, since 2017. I think it was a financial customer that originally requested it. And so it's battle tested. It's been around for a while. However, there are additions to vector support coming along. So that event that Matt mentioned to you, that's taking place very soon, later this month, there will be some announcements around this whole sort of vector space as well. And so I'd encourage you to sign up and register for that and attend and learn all the cool stuff that's coming along. Very briefly then, so real-time decisions, AI apps, dynamic experiences, ad hoc queries, that's entirely possible through the built-in SQL editor. We're going to be doing a bit of kind of ML AI today. And dashboards, so if you're familiar with Tableau or any JDBC, ODBC tools that you want to connect to create your visual dashboards, very easy to do as well. I use Metabase, the free version. So it's just a jar file, download it, and then literally in a couple of minutes, you can have some nice charts and graphs and pie charts and things, and dead simple to do. Free version is pretty capable as well. Okay, so here's a list of some of the tools and technologies that we work with really well in terms of ML and AI stuff. And so I've kind of mentioned Spark already, and we'll do a little bit of Python today. I've got a little bit on the vector functions for you. Okay, and actually just recently, within the last couple of days, published an article on dzone, which covers dot product, Euclidean distance, cosine similarity, and how these are supported in SingleStore DB. And I've also used a bit of WebAssembly today, which I've kind of threatened to do for a while for this particular problem. And I'll discuss more of that very shortly. But essentially what I've done is I've taken some Rust code and a library, Veda, okay, valence aware, dictionary, and sentiment reasoner. I've packaged up the code. I've loaded the code into SingleStore DB. So it treats it as a UDF. And then I've run that UDF over the data to generate some sentiment. So whether it's neutral, positive, or negative. And that's been done on a large quantity of data. So previously, the challenge I had with the sentiment data that I'm going to use today is that unfortunately, there were some resource limitations, not for SingleStore DB, but for the environment that I was using. It was using sort of Finbert and Hugging Face and so on. And unfortunately, it is running into issues in terms of not having enough capacity to be able to generate the full 1.8 million rows, I think. So we only managed to get 300. But today I did the same. It took a little bit of time because I had to load in the CSV file into a table and then generate, take the opportunity to get that WebAssembly generated, the code uploaded, run it on the data, and literally in about sort of 10, 15 seconds, it had accomplished the task and, given me a brand new table with all of the sentiment numbers. So we'll look at that very shortly as well. And of course, OpenAI as well down at the bottom here. And we'll be using a little bit of that today as well. Okay. So just 2 slides on FinTech. So essentially, I mean, it's a huge area. I mean, here you can see these candlestick charts, which we'll be doing a little bit of today. And picking, let me just try and get this a little bit better here. There we are. So focusing on this. Enormous in terms of the market. So these sort of predictions, 324 billion US dollars, I'm assuming that is, by 2026, 25% global adoption rates, 96% of consumers are aware of at least one FinTech service. So I'm sure you've run into this yourselves, or you've had some exposure to this, or you've heard about it in one form or another. I mean, we all deal with this at some level with various financial institutions. Lots of possibilities in terms of where this could be used. So advanced risk analytics, for example, real-time investment performance calculations, embedded finance apps, peer-to-peer lending seems to be a very popular and growing area, alternative payments and financing. And then there you can see a whole range of customers that SingleStore has worked with over the years. And you can see that the range of sort of requirements, the ability to capture that real-time data, get the insights very, very quickly. One of the key benefits of SingleStore as well is because it can do multiple, both OLTP, OLAP, plus the multi-modal capabilities, essentially that makes the life of the developer much easier. And if you're a business leader, it makes your life easier as well, because in terms of the TCO is much lower. You have a product rather than having to stitch together half a dozen or more different products to achieve the same thing. And the high scale, so scale with high concurrency as well. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that. Okay, and let's just go straight to the demos. Let me, before I dive in, just to highlight the key technologies that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use OpenAI, vector embeddings, okay, and open source Whisper for the speech to text. I've got speech synthesis as well, running in a Linux virtual machine, so actually give the answer back using the voice available there as well. That's one of the options. I use WebAssembly to help me in terms of generating the sentiment analysis. That I said, as I said before, is something I've been meaning to do for a while. Finally, I got around to doing it today, and it was awesome because it was ever so fast, and literally it saved me a huge amount of time without having, rather than using a lot of external tools and technologies. And then the last thing here is that we are going to look at the LangChain online PDF loader as well, and SQL Agent. SQL Agent is awesome because it allows us to interact with the database system using natural language. And I think that's going to become much more relevant going forward. So as powerful as SQL is, and as mature as it is, because it's been around for a very long time, it's well understood. But for the average user who may not be familiar with the syntax or doesn't particularly want to learn a language to interact with the database system, the ability to either ask the question in natural language or to be able to specify it through speech could be very useful. These provide alternatives, different ways that we can interact with our data. And so certainly for the sort of question and answering, we are going to take an example sort of PDF document that contains some information. We're going to chunk it up. We're going to generate and get some sort of embeddings, vector embeddings for that. We'll store those in SingleStore DB as well. And that will all be done through LangChain. And then we'll do this kind of nearest neighbor search to find relevant information, which is, again, very, very useful. And as Matt alluded to a little bit earlier on, there's more cool stuff coming along very soon. And that will just improve upon what SingleStore already does. Okay, so there's the summary, but let's switch now to this. Okay, let me just close this window and go to here. What I'll do is I'll make this larger, and let's see if I can just yeah, there we go. Zoom in a bit more, okay, just to make that a little bit larger for you. So let me just show you the schema that I've got here, what I've set up previously. So I've got a database, okay, it's just called Time Series DB. Okay, so this has been set up a little bit earlier on. And then I've got a couple of tables. So naturally, there's a table to manage the tick data here. Okay, so consisting of the actual stock symbol, the timestamp, and then I've got open, high, low, and the price, the volume of trades as well. And then I've got a key here, which is using the timestamp. I've got a sentiment table here as well, which contains sort of the particular headline. I've trimmed it down, okay, because the text can be quite large. So I'm just taking the first 250 characters. Although, if you want the original source, as I said before, you can get that on Kaggle. And then I generated the sentiment, the positive, the negative, the neutral. These values have been done using a WebAssembly UDF. The URL, okay, where this particular story, this headline came from, who was the publisher as well, when was this published, and then the stock symbol that this relates to. There's a table that I just use for sort of temporary analysis and preparation here. That isn't really used, but you can see the definition there just as a way to get the data in. And one of the things that this allows us to do is that my UDF function, it's called sentiment table, and you can see it here. Okay, I can actually pass it a string like this as well. For example, if I might be interested in movies, and just by the by, give it a string like this. The movie was great! Exclamation mark, and I can ask it, evaluate this. Tell me what you think. What is this sentence showing you? And it will give me the positive. Let me just zoom out the way there, and just again position this and run this. See if we can get that. Okay, there we go. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's given me a couple of values back. Okay, so this is compound number, which is a combination of these other numbers. So largely it says this is positive. Okay, so it's 0.63. Doesn't sound negative at all. That's valued out at 0. And then the neutral is kind of makes up the rest, if you like, the 0.369. And so Beta is very useful because what it can do is that it can pick up things like emojis. So if you've got smiley face or sad face, it can evaluate those for you as well. It can evaluate the fact that I've stressed great in caps here, as you can see. And I've put an exclamation mark at the end as well to really emphasize the fact that I really, really like this. And so these things are very, very useful. So I've used this over the data, and just below here is the actual sort of SQL code that I've used in order to do that. So I applied this to the temporary kind of table that I was using, that I uploaded the data into, and then I said, okay, take some of these columns here, the headline, for example, the URL, and so on, which are can be used straight away, but then apply the function, the UDF itself, to return these kind of values. So in this particular case, I'm not interested in the compound, but I am doing the positive, negative, and the neutral. So that's how I actually arrived at the data. And that takes it's something like 1.8 million rows in the CSV data file. And I've been able to do that successfully today. In the past, as I said before, I became unstuck, suffered some problems because the environment I was trying to do it in, as I said before, nothing to do with SingleStore. It's Finbert and Hugging Face collab, and it just would not get that far. So typically I just use 300 rows, and that was it. Now, where is my tick data coming from? Well, here is the Kafka feed. Okay, so this, as you can see, I've created this pipeline, and I've given it an address where this, public Kafka memcompute.com, port 9092, and there you can see the topic, stock ticker. And so what this is doing is this is being read in, and I've had this pipeline going for a fair few hours now, at least sort of 5-6 hours. And so if I take a look at this and do a count, let's take a look at this. It tells me at the moment, not sure if you're able to read that, but it's about 14.5 million rows of data here, just down the bottom here, okay? Just over here. And that feed is continuing. And obviously at the end of this webinar, I'll shut it down. But that's great, okay? Because if we're getting data arriving into this table continuously, and therefore when we run some queries across the data, it gives us at that particular point in time what the state of the data are. Okay, so that's very straightforward, okay? So let me switch now to a notebook here. So again, this is built into this web-based environment. So once you've logged into the portal, you've got your account created, you'll see that there's a kind of a left nav. It's got a bunch of stuff there. So one of them is the SQL editor, which we were just looking at a moment ago there. And the other thing that we have available is this kind of notebooks. So if you're familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, that's exactly what it is. You can store these in your sort of personal space or a shared space. I'm running these in shared space at the moment. And let me just work through this code with you and just show you what I've got. And then we'll show you what we've done with the with taking some data, getting some embeddings, storing it in SingleStore DB, and then doing a bit of analysis using an NLM, and then also the SQL agent that we've got with the LangChain to ask some questions. So standard stuff here, time series data. Okay, so you can see I've run this before. So what I can do is I can restart the kernel, clear the output. Okay, so we start from scratch. In case we have problems, I do have a backup of this with the data. Okay, let me just try this again. There we go. All right, in case it doesn't work, just refresh the page. Let's try that. Hey, there we go. Okay. Let's try that again. I see the output is still there. Let me try this again. Okay. This time it works. Okay, so I think it was just hung there. The page has been open for quite a long time. So here, let's just work through these queries. Okay, so the average aggregate, standard kind of FinTech type stuff. This is just showing me the symbol and it's doing it alphabetically. And I'm just printing the sort of first 5 here. Okay, nothing particularly special about that, but again, just using standard SQL. This is interesting, the time bucketing. Okay, so I can do the first, last. I can create this time bucket, and I can, in this particular case, I'm looking at the data across sort of 5 days. As you can see, in this particular case, I'm looking at Apple, AAPL. It's only returned me 1 value there. Probably not enough in the data set to give me anything more at this particular point in time, but that's okay. All right. Remember, I said that this is randomly generated. So the next thing, candlestick charts. Again, let's just run through this. There we go. And again, you can see we haven't got anything particularly useful. It'd be great to have a bit more data here. Let's see, could we change this? Okay, so currently selected at 1 day as the time bucket. So it looks like there isn't much more data right there at the moment, but it's given me 2 rows so far. And if you have access to a real kind of ticker feed, I'm sure you'll get much better results. And then here we've got a little bit of Python code to create a plot. Okay, it's asking me how many days. Let's say 3. And then what's the stock symbol again? I'll put in Apple. There we go. And well, not an awful lot happening there. So you can see that this is fairly small. Generally, it's the close, as you can see, it's showing has gone down. So that's the 9th of the 1st, 2024. Open, high, low, and the close price there. But again, probably insufficient data. We can do a little bit of smoothing as well here. Okay, this is just kind of windowing. It's a little better. And then we can also look at the value as of a particular point in time. And today is the 10th of January 2024. And I've just asked it, what's the last value that you've currently got? And this is the latest value for Apple that it's come back with. Okay. And as you can see, it's set at 23.59.59 on the previous night. That was the closest that it was able to find. And it's given me the various open, high, low price and the volume traded as well. Okay. So here then is the sentiment data. So again, what I can do is that table that we use the WebAssembly to help us, 1.8 million rows. And then we can ask, okay, show me the headline and then show me the sentiment, the positive, the negative, the neutral, and the actual symbol as well. And then I want to do it for Apple in this case. So actually, I don't need the symbol. Seems a bit unnecessary, but there we go. And here you can see, I mean, I could ask it what is, where has this come from, the URL as well, if I wanted to. That's stored in the table as well. But here you can see it's generated some values. In some cases, it's given me an absolute figure. So no positive, no negative. You can see in this first row here, the neutral is 1.0. And further down here, we can see that we've got a slightly better case here with the positive is a lot smaller here, and the neutral is a lot higher, and that adds up to 1 as well because the negative is 0, and so on. Okay, so this is just picking out 5 rows for that particular symbol. And again, the date is stored as well, the timestamp. So we'll be able to utilize this in a couple of minutes' time. All right, so let's move on then. And let's take a look at some additional analysis that we could do. Okay, so this is just using LangChain and OpenAI. And here you can see I'm using the latest versions because I haven't specified a particular version of this. It's asking me for the OpenAI key, which I hope should be on my clipboard. Let's paste that in. Let's try that. Okay. And then what we'll do here, we've got, in order to manage, say, PDF documents, we need to utilize a couple of these libraries, PDF to image, PDF miner. We are also installing SingleStore and a couple of other things there. There we go. And then in this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm taking an investment document that's actually available from this location here. I mean, you can use your own, okay? If you have access to something else, that's absolutely fine. This one happens to be from Northern Ireland, and I found it useful because it's got some information in there about various companies that operate in that space. And then there is some information there about blockchain, which I don't happen to know very much about. So I might be interested in, getting some assessment of that. So I will get this PDF document. Okay, there we go. And then what I'd like to do then is that because it's too large to kind of analyze maybe as is, there's a limit in terms of the tokens. What we can do is just break it down into smaller parts here. And we can just have a look, and it tells us that there is one document, and currently it's measured this out at nearly 40,000 characters. And so what we'll do is we'll split this into smaller parts, chunk size of 2,000 characters, have a little bit of an overlap as well. Okay, that's can be very useful so that we don't kind of chop off things necessarily in the middle of a sentence, for example. Gives us a bit better in terms of how we do that split. So now it's giving me 23 pages there. And from this, then what we'll do is we'd like to create some OpenAI embeddings. Now there you can see I'm getting a warning in terms of things that may be deprecated. As I mentioned earlier, this is fast-moving space. You got to keep on top of it, and you got to be aware of these changes. So for now, that works okay. But in the future, it may not. And so that's something to be aware of with these things come and go. I'll just make sure this particular table is dropped that I'm going to use to store it. And then here, literally, you can see in a couple of lines of code, what's happening is that LangChain is taking that chunked up document. We've got the embeddings. We're going to store that in SingleStore, and it's going to do that in a table called FinTech docs. Okay, there we go. And it's part of the integration that it has with SingleStore. It's all done there. And then as part of that, we could actually do a little bit of a querying then. We can say, all right, show me what you've got. And there'll be sort of 2 columns there. So one will be the content. Okay, that's the actual text. And then secondly will be the embedding, the vectors that are generated for that particular row. Okay. And then we'll just limit this to 5. Now, the way this is represented, okay, so again, I'm using this substring here to just reduce the amount of data that's being displayed. Otherwise, it just fills up the screen. So you can see here that we have the actual content. Okay, these are just sort of the first 30 characters. And on the right-hand side, this is the kind of internal representation of what the vectors actually look like. And a little bit of a clue. I mean, you may already have guessed, but the fact that it's got this B at the beginning, okay, so these are kind of bytes. And we can take a look at what these actual values translate into by using this JSON array unpack function here on that particular column. Okay, if we do that, here it shows us what the embeddings actually translate into. So again, we use small amount of text here just to see that there is something there. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the actual vector embeddings there. And again, it goes off the screen there, okay? So it's just showing us the partial view of what's available. But that's, again, how it's currently stored. More cool stuff coming along, as I said before, soon. All right. So once we've got this, we can ask interesting things. So as I said before, I'm not particularly up to speed or know an awful lot about blockchain, but what I might be interested in is getting some insights into investment opportunities in this space. So I can ask the question, what are the best investment opportunities in blockchain? And then here it gives me a summary of this. And it pulls out the relevant information from this. You can see here that there are a couple of companies that are referenced here, such as PwC, Vox Financial Partners, Rakuten Blockchain Lab, for example. All of this information contained within the data there, and it's pulled out the relevant parts of it. So it's done the analysis, the hard work for me, essentially summarizing it for me to show me what it can find and retrieving the relevant parts according to the question that I've asked there. And then finally, we can use an LLM here to give us a bit more, okay? And if we take a look at this, it provides here a summary. So now this is helpful for me because, again, someone like me who is not particularly knowledgeable about blockchain, I can read something like this and it says, it gives me a kind of a very helpful summary. It says some of the best investment opportunities in blockchain include companies like PwC, and we saw those referenced just above there. But here it's kind of presented in a nice way, in a nice format, succinctly summarized in a small paragraph there to show me what is, the essence of what we retrieved a little bit earlier there. Okay, and we can drop this table as well. Finally, let's have a look down here then. So one of the nice things is that with LangChain, again, we have this really nice integration with the relational databases and SQL in particular. And then here is one of those things, again, that to cause some issues today is that OpenAI, some of the models that they've been offering for some time are no longer available. So it's necessary to stay on top of that. So I had to substitute this, for example, as the as what I wanted to use now, which is the kind of replacement. Temperature set to 0. So this gives us deterministic answers. Okay, we will get back. If you want something a bit more colorful, let's put it that way, it means change that value to something else, 0.5 or higher, or 1 if you want. And then down below here, I think we've got verbose set to true. Okay, so we'd like to kind of see how it arrived at the answer. What is the thinking behind the process that it used to give us the appropriate answer. So let's just do this. Okay, and again, we can see there's a warning there about something being deprecated in a forthcoming release. But finally, we can ask a question there. So my question to using LangChain to the database system in English is, I'm saying, so from the tick table, which stock symbol saw the least volatility in share trading in the data set? Now, notice that I am being quite specific. So I am focusing its efforts on a specific table, which is the tick table, rather than getting it to look across everything, in which case it might not be able to, it may make some assumptions and draw out things that I may not necessarily be interested in. So I'm being quite specific. And then again, I'm telling it what I'm interested in, the stock symbol itself, rather than anything else around it. and then looking at the least volatility, okay, in share trading. So if I ask this question, okay, again, we get line chain warning. So here you can see that the agent is going through the process, showing you, it's kind of working out, if you like, to tell you what it's actually looked at. It's looked at, it's noticed that within that database system, there are actually a couple of tables, okay? So we've got the raw partner headlines, the stock sentiment, the tick table, which we looked at earlier, all three of these. I showed you the schema for those. And then it says the thought, I should query the tick table to see what the columns are available. And it's done exactly that. So it's looked at the structure, okay, looked at the schema for that. And then it's looked at some of the data that's stored in there as well. It shows you that just below there. And then again, it's showing you its kind of thinking process. It says, I should query the tick table to see which stock symbol has the least volatility in share trading, which was my original query. And then it's done that and come back with the final answer here, just below. And it tells me that that is FTR. Okay. So at this point in time, rather than hard coding it as we've done here, we could actually make it a bit better. So we could, enter your question here. So we could ask something like, for example, what stock symbol has the best, I could say, has the most positive sentiment, okay, using the, let's just have a look, it's the stock sentiment table, stock sentiment table. So again, you can see I'm kind of focusing its effort on a specific example there. So again, what it's done, it shows you it's working out. So it tells you that it's looked at the stock sentiment table, it's looked at the structure. What does it look like? It's pulled out some of the sentiment, a couple of rows there, 3 rows from there, and it's showing you the SQL query that it's used to kind of answer that question there. And in this particular case, it says, I know the final answer, it's SLV. All right. Now, obviously, I can refine that query further. Okay. So I could potentially ask it for a particular date range, for example, or I may ask it for the particular URL. What is the source of that, and so on. Okay. So you can see that that gives us a lot of flexibility and the ability to query the data in sort of very interesting ways. Okay, now we're almost out of time. Just very quickly, one final thing, and that is just switch to the virtual machine. Okay, so here, what I've done is taken this a step further, and I've just written a little bit of Python code so I could do something like this, for example. Just launch this. Okay, there we go. Don't worry about these warning messages. Okay, so it's just a few things that SingleStore has. For example, it uses particular. I just minimize this a moment. Okay, so I could ask questions such as, what is the difference between the highest and lowest prices for AAPL? Stop recording. Okay, and there it's come up with the answer, and it says the difference between the highest and lowest price for AAPL is, in this particular case, is only $4.28, for example. Okay, and we could take that a step further, and we could actually, let me skip the middle one, okay, because the last one just shows a combination of the middle one and the text to speech. Okay, so this is just taking a little bit step further. Let me let's have a look. What's the stock symbol with the least volatility in the tick table? All right, so you can see there I stuttered a little bit, and let's see if it's able to pick up.
The stock symbol with the in the tick table is FTR.
Okay, so it's still able to, do a pretty good job there. So, although if I look at what it's transcribed, it says watch the stock symbol with the least volatility in the tick table. All right, so it's not 100% perfect, but did a pretty good job. Was able to pick up that fact. And this is using a local install of the Whisper technology. So as you can see, certain languages are better supported than others. And I'm using a sort of reasonably medium-sized model, okay? Larger models, obviously, you get much better results. And so I think some languages, as I said, I think Spanish, English are well supported. Other languages, again, it's documented on the GitHub page, less well, let's put it that way. Less well supported, okay? All right, then. So let's take a look at, get back to our slides, okay? So essentially, what have we seen then? We've seen how we can take a feed. In this particular case, it's using Kafka, and we are taking data in from this sort of real feed, storing it into this stock tick table. Remember, that is all of that data is fictitious. We've got a stock sentiment, which is based upon real data. And again, we can do joins across these two tables, okay? Because they are symbols. And we might be interested in particular date ranges, for example. I didn't have time to do that today, but you can see that that's perfectly doable. The LangChain SQL agent, very useful for natural language, could be very helpful, particularly for people who aren't very familiar with SQL, for example, but the ability to ask intelligent questions using natural language could be the way forward. OpenAI's open source Whisper, pretty awesome technology. I mean, the fact that it's free, okay, that you can use that, download it, and it works really well. Obviously, different models available. I used a kind of a middle one and using English, but other languages are supported, as I said. Just need to choose and find what's appropriate for your use case and whether the language support is good enough. And using these, you can see that it's perfectly reasonable and perfectly feasible to put together some kind of chatbot as well for questions and answers that you could ask it particular questions about stock symbols, for example, get back reasonably good analysis of that based upon all of the data that's stored in the database system. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that. And let me just show this at the end here as well, in case, just remind you again for the next event that's coming up Friday. I think Matt's going to be very busy, I think, this year. So please sign up for that and join us for that one. Okay, I think there's time for a couple of questions, Matt. So I'll hand over to you now. So if there's anything interesting that you've had people ask, please fire away and I'll do my best to help.
Sounds good. Will do. And reminder to our audience, the Q&A is still open, so feel free to get your questions in and we will try to get to as many as we can. A popular question, Akmal, as always, is about the code notebook. People are wondering how quickly they'll be able to get their hands on your notebook.
Yeah, okay. So I will do my very best. Give me half a day, okay? If that's reasonable, okay? Sorry, I can't be faster. Like I said, I would very much like if this stuff didn't change so much so often, but that's life, okay? And that's the nature of the technology. So I fixed it sufficiently to be able to show it, but what I need is a little bit of time, a couple of hours just to clean it up, okay? And so for you, you don't need to know about the WebAssembly, okay? Because all of that the sentiment data, I will generate for you and provide that for you, okay? So all you need to do is just load it in from a CSV file. You don't have to go through the process that I had to generate that for you, okay? So I think tomorrow sometime, if that's okay, Matt, as I said, I do need about a couple of hours just to polish this up, clean it up, and have that ready. So if people are happy to wait just half a day or so, then we can send the link out for that. And again, I need to check that it works. No point to give you something and you get frustrated because it's broken and it doesn't work for you. So, let me test it as though I'm a user and I can get it done.
Awesome.
So very soon is the answer. So
Oh, you're getting lots of great comments. Eric says you're a great teacher. Rebecca says excellent demo. That's come in throughout the session, but I'll pass those along. But I also want to get to some of these questions. One is LangChain or OpenAI unstable for you? Do you have any temperature risks inventing new answers that aren't founded in the
right. Okay, you've just frozen there, Matt, so I'm not sure if you can still hear me. Oh, you're back. Yeah, so this whole concept, what's called hallucinations, I think that's the thing. So the thing is that the LLM kind of makes things up. This is why you saw me using temperature equals 0, because what I'm asking it is for deterministic answers. And the other thing is that one thing that you can do with an LLM, you can say to it, okay, if you do not know the answer, just say you don't know the answer, okay? Don't go away and try to make things up for yourself. And then, there are things that you can use to mitigate this. Now, how accurate are the results that I'm getting back? That's a great question. Is everything that I've shown you today 100% true and correct? The only way to verify that would be to run some parallel queries using SQL and analyze the data at that point in time that the query is running to confirm that, yes, this particular stock symbol really is the best performing, or this really was the price difference between the highest and lowest for that particular stock symbol. But I'm pretty confident that the results we are getting back are accurate. I can't be 100% confident simply because I haven't had time to analyze it myself, but that's part of the acceptance process when you're building these systems, that you would go through the process of testing and rigorous testing as well.
Good stuff. What about here's a question. Have you ever had a streaming use case where the data continuously flows in and is vectorized, continuously informing a real-time AI assistant?
Okay, that's a great question. So if you remember, Matt, back in the conference that we had, the SingleStore Now event that we did in, I think, was it October last year in San Francisco? So there was a use case for threat detection, which I did with Arnaud. And in that particular case, he was taking a feed, which was kind of logs, website attacks, things like SQL attacks or brute force attacks, people trying to discover passwords. So these things were coming in, and he was generating on the fly embeddings and then doing analysis of that as well as the data were being ingested, just to determine what was actually going on. So yes, it's entirely possible. And I think there is one example of where it would be extremely useful, because no point you learning about a website attack, a day or 2 days or 3 days after the fact. I mean, it may well be too late. Your data is stolen. Credentials are stolen. People's details, their age, their credit card number, whatever, the driving license number may have gone. So this is an excellent use case and an example where you could do this. And yes, it's perfectly possible to do that. Yeah.
Awesome. What about a question? If you're using embeddings from a different LLM, would that still work?
Yes, it would, but you wouldn't necessarily get the same results, okay? Because each of these LLMs use different techniques, these kind of transformers, in order to generate these embeddings. So just because you use, say, OpenAI doesn't necessarily mean that if you use, say, Meta or something else, the results necessarily are the same, okay? The embeddings may be different. It just depends upon how these were originally generated. So again, this is part of the kind of evaluation process. We had this question before, I think, people kind of wondering, can you use multiple LLMs? Of course you could if you wanted to, and there may be circumstances where one of them is particularly stronger in one particular domain. The results may be much better for you. Another one might be better in another one. It's like having kind of several cars, you need them for different jobs. Most people have one family car, but sometimes there are situations where you wouldn't be necessarily driving a saloon car in an F1 driving race. You need the car that's appropriate for the job, and therefore you pick the best tool for the job.
Awesome. I'm going to give you one more, and then we can get into the AirPods announcement. Can you talk at all about the technology behind OpenAI Whisper? This is fascinating to see natural language, text-to-speech. Wondering what's behind it.
It's all on GitHub. So we can provide the link for that, Matt. So and basically, because it's open source, you can go in and poke around and have a look at how they've actually put this together. Why I like it so much is that because it's free and it's pretty robust, it allows you to use it free of charge. On the other hand, if you do want to use OpenAI instead, the paid service that they have, you can do that. But you're sending things across the wire to them to evaluate on their servers and then send the result back. There may be a time lag for that. In this particular case, I mean, because it's open source, I mean, I haven't dug into it significantly enough just to understand how to use it and to apply it. And as you can see, the results are pretty good, and I'm happy with it. So it's as a free option, I think this is great. And if you certainly want to think about text-to-speech, speech-to-text kind of thing, and using speech synthesis as well, because, I mean, look at me. I mean, I'm wearing glasses, so I'm a little bit, in terms of challenge, in terms of my eyesight. Equally, there may be people who are more challenged, and therefore having the ability to use text-to-speech, for example, could be a great way to help them. And this would certainly be a great solution, I think.
Awesome. Thanks, Akmal. Okay, let's get to that AirPods winner. But first, as I mentioned during the intro, Friday, we're going to be presenting the Llama 2 versus Mistral for fully private Gen AI apps. I put that link in the chat. We'd love to see you there. And then Akmal, if you click to the next slide, you'll see that we're also on January 24th, our new Meet SingleStore Pro Max Powerhouse Edition, all of the new real-time AI features that we've been working on for months. I put that link in the chat as well. Hope to see you there. The announcement you've been waiting for, today's AirPods winner goes to Jay Parapalaki. Sorry if I butchered that. You're architect at Walmart. Thank you for joining us, Jay. If that's not you, don't give up. We're going to announce one more AirPods winner by the end of the day. To anyone who has tried this out, keep your eye on your email. We'll be sending out Akmal's GitHub and a recording to today's session. Thank you, Akmal, for an awesome presentation as usual. Thank you to our audience. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.